with the bill we saw this morning in the Senate, which is House Bill 1539. It's a triggered tax cut. Really deep, biggest concern is that it's an income tax cut and it's not a targeted income tax cut. So that tax cut's going to benefit the wealthy. We know that income tax cuts overwhelmingly benefit the top earners in our community. So I'm talking about top 1%, top 10% get the vast majority of those cuts. And really, there's no plan presented with this. It was presented as if it's a conservative plan, but it actually did not have any measures or ways to determine what's going to happen with revenue in the future. And it's a trigger, which we've had problems with before. Other states have had problems with triggers. The trigger happens in December. The Senate meets February to May. So what we're talking about is a big financial decision where we actually couldn't course correct in real time. And so I want to make sure that one of my concerns is we didn't move forward any of the bills that actually prioritize working families and prioritize those folks who are having the hardest time getting by. So I'm talking about we didn't look at sales tax relief credit. We didn't increase the earned income tax credit. There were bills and measures brought forward that could have been targeted relief for low-income folks, and we didn't do any of those. My other big worry with this bill is it's actually kind of a trick because it's being presented as a tax cut, but it's actually a trigger for a future tax cut. So I think it's going to be marketed as a win for a path to zero income tax, but it's really just fake. It's a trigger only, which means that it could happen in the future. And so I think it's going to be presented to the people of Oklahoma as if they're getting a tax cut when they're not. That's the big thing I wanted to talk about. What do you guys want to talk about?
Well, speaking of that, so if I'm understanding correctly, this December, they're going to be considering funds for fiscal year 27, right? And this would look back to fiscal year 25. Mm-hmm. That just, I mean, a 2-year gap, I mean, a lot of things can happen in 2 years.
Yeah,
funding-wise.
Right.
I mean, is that kind of what concerns you?
Yeah, that's part of it. And then setting up a trigger based on projections. With projections are always an estimate. We don't ever nail it perfectly. We do get close, but you're talking about being very reliant on oil and gas prices. I mean, things don't stay the same year to year. So I think you're talking about comparing actuals to projections. I think that's always a little bit of a problem.
What's the wisdom of something like this coming at a time when we've heard that both the Senate Appropriations and House Appropriations chairs are sending letters to state agencies about what they might do in a 2% cut for revenue failure? You heard about that?
Yeah, I mean, we know that we're going to see reduction next year, and we don't have recurring revenue to spend, and then we're at the same time talking about cuts that are going to happen in the future. I think it's disconnected to reality in some ways to be passing a tax cut when we know our state revenues are flat or down. And then we know there's big tax cuts, big cuts coming from the federal government. And when I look at those agencies that are most reliant on federal tax money, they're ones that provide some pretty important things in our state. We're talking about health access. 1/4 of Oklahomans are on Medicaid. We're talking about roads and bridges and our schools. And so those are the areas we're going to see huge problems. That's our biggest part of our state budget as well. So when we talk about tax cuts, even if they don't take place for a year without a plan, I don't think that's a good way to do policy. I think we have to focus on policies that make sense and where we've actually planned it out. And we can tell people honestly that this is going to be safe and that we're going to make sure we have public safety in mind, that we make sure we know what we're doing. And what I heard was a lot of ambiguity.
This week, there's been reports about visas from students at universities being taken from the federal government. I just wanted to ask you, have you heard about that? Have you talked with anybody affected? Obviously, we know Senator Brooks is working quite a bit and everything. So just wanted to ask you what you've heard.
Yeah, the student visas, I understand that the law does allow them to be removed. I think what we have to be concerned about is how much this is going to change our universities. Oklahoma universities have amazing foreign students at them. We've had them for years. Most of those exchange students pay full price. And so our schools have very much depended on having students here from out of the country. And I'm very nervous about the implication that people aren't safe here. I imagine families are making decisions not to send their kids to our country. And so I'm worried about that. I just mainly want to express empathy that I think we need to have more certainty for folks around these rules and laws and how it's being implemented, because it's creating fear. And I don't see why we can't tell people what the reasoning is, give people some understanding of what's going on, rather than leaving kind of this general fearfulness for students to be worried about it ongoing.
Here's another federal government thing, but the National Weather Service says they're not going to be pushing out alerts and translating away from English. We have a decent amount of Spanish speakers here in Oklahoma City and Oklahoma, so I wanted to ask you, what you thought about that.
Yeah, I mean, we're all at risk if we don't. Science has progressed. Our community's ability to know what's coming in terms of the weather has made so much progress. We should be making sure that's accessible to all. And we've seen what happens when there's damage in our community. All of us suffer. All of us have to help with that rebuild. And so if we're not making sure people can stay safe, I'm really worried about that. That seems to me a lack of planning, not looking at real consequences, and really politics taking priority over people.
I was curious if we go back to the tax question real quick. Where are you on the concept? Let's play this chess game out. That if the budget gets sent to the governor, it doesn't include a tax cut, and he vetoes a significant amount of the budget or all of it. Where do you think you and your caucus will be in terms of potentially working with, Senate leadership to override that?
Yeah, you're really playing this one out, Trace. And we frequently have to deal with the chips that are before us because we're not in those leadership planning sessions. I mean, I had real concerns about sending this bill back to the House with title on, because I think we've given up some of our negotiating power through that. And it needed fixes, frankly, because it was not well written. But I think when you look down the road, if we support tax cuts, they're going to be targeted on low-income folks, targeted towards working folks. So this bill would not be that. I know that. So I kind of have to deal with it one piece at a time, honestly.
Have you been thinking more, the state chamber has routinely pushed flatten the brackets, raise the standard deduction. Some people would argue that would have a better effect for more people, right, as opposed to just the quarter point reduction or a tenth of a point reduction. Is that something that you have any thoughts about?
Well, the best option would be to improve the sales tax relief credit, which is 40 years behind inflation and is specifically based on income level. And the next best would be to fix earned income tax credit, which encourages people to earn and gives them an additional money back. We did support the measure that would flatten the taxes and raise the standard deduction. I have some issues with the flattening of taxes because we're talking about very low brackets. And so it's a little bit of a facade that it's a big change to flatten $7,000 being our top tax bracket. But I think raising the standard deduction makes sense. That certainly will give some certainty to low-income people in terms of looking at their taxes. If they make less than $13,500, that they won't be paying, and that seems very reasonable. All the years I've been talking to people about taxes, they're shocked that people who make less than $20,000 are paying the same as the rest of us.
Go ahead.
No, I just said thank you.
Okay. I'll apologize to Emma before this, but there was a tweet from the governor yesterday. I guess in the House, 29 Democratic bills passed, and it's disappointing. And then he and Leader Munson kind of had a little debate on Twitter. From the other side, how does that all look to you, and just how it looks?
Well, I think what you see is people might talk about bipartisan, but are they really willing to do it? If the idea is good, for the people of Oklahoma, are you willing to support those bills, no matter who the author is, no matter where that idea came from? And so that's what I see in that, is that the governor is not going to look at the policy itself, but instead is looking at the party. And I don't think that's what we were sent here to do. We were sent here to work for the people. I support Republican ideas every day. I also expect them to do the same if the idea is worth it. And I would think that's what the people of Oklahoma expect.
Senator, the Ethics Commission is meeting right now to discuss prosecuting Ron Walters because he won't tell them who donated to his campaign in 2022. Can you speak to that, and what can you say to people who don't have faith in the system that Walters seems to always escape consequences?
Yeah, I mean, this is a very important case for forcing people to comply with our campaign ethics rules. I wish it was faster. I mean, that's a real concern that we need these investigations and the results to happen more quickly so that they impact people closer to when they've actually gotten elected. I mean, we're almost to re-election time. But I would say the people have a right to be concerned. I mean, we do not have a system that thoroughly stops corruption, oversees our campaigns thoroughly. We really rely heavily on outside people to review those reports. Thank goodness for journalists catching some of these things, because I think it's very hard for a very small ethics commission staff to look at all those reports and try to suss out what might be wrong and what might be missing. And I think what we see is, a willful move towards not complying. I mean, if you're literally not saying who paid for things in your campaign, then you are hiding that on purpose, and it has to be vetted. So I hope that this is prosecuted to the full extent of the law, and that it's an example for all of us in elected office that we have to do the right thing and that we have to follow the law.
I wanted to ask you about turnpikes. Yesterday there was a bill that got a do not pass in the House. It was a Senate bill. What this would do is allow the Turnpike Authority to get information using OS, like cameras, to get their information on who owns a car. This all revolves around tribal tags. The governor yesterday says it's disgusting, it's ridiculous that Native Americans who have cars can drive on the turnpikes for free. But on the other hand, some representatives are like, not even law enforcement can use that data. There should just be government-to-government relations. I wanted to ask you, where are you at with that?
Yeah, I mean, we have to respect sovereignty, and if we've made compacts with the tribes for their license plates, and we have to respect that process. And if that data is going to come, it should come directly from the tribe. I think we're seeing continual issues with the turnpike going completely tollless. I mean, going totally to the cameras, and I think this is something we should have planned long before getting rid of the folks who are collecting those tolls on the roads. Anything else? You all good?
Did you talk about mental health briefly?
No.
I was curious what the latest is and the extent to which. I just want to know your thoughts.
Yeah.
Thoughts.
Yeah, we've heard from a lot of different individuals in the mental health realm in terms of people who are providing services to the public and those who are also making these decisions. And we need to take action quickly. The cuts that are being faced by our providers around the state are going to cripple our community-based health system. We specifically have asked these nonprofits to grow in order to reach more people. We asked them to stand up urgent care center. We asked them to build this infrastructure, and then now these decisions are cutting that back. And I'm deeply concerned because we finally made progress on having rural urgent care centers, on diverting people from law enforcement when mental health is a real concern, and these cuts will impact that. And if they're not turned back, literally in the next week or two, people are going to be cutting staff, and we're going to see people in rural areas won't have access to mobile care. One of our big issues is uncompensated care, so people who can't pay or don't have insurance, right? We have covered those needs for those community-based organizations. So to me, it is not only dangerous to our system, we're going to have more people incarcerated, more people in crisis, but it's also not good business practices to cut a contract right in the middle with zero transition. So we've got to take action. I think I've talked to a wide variety of parties. I don't see yet the legislature acting, so I hope the executive branch is taking action, but I have not yet heard that they are.
That's the last thing. Is your caucus, have you been updated, involved in the consideration of the social studies standards review?
Yeah. So our caucus took a strong stand against. I mean, we filed the resolution to reject. We've been very proactive in terms of informing people who are trying to understand how we could reject those social studies standards. It has to happen soon. And, we've made sure now we know that the governor can't take action without us, and we've seen no action out of the legislature. So we're, parents who've expressed concerns to me about the types of things their kids are going to be taught, the types of things teachers are going to be asked to teach in the classroom. When they come to me, I say, you need to be calling as many legislators as you can to try to get this heard and get that resolution passed. Because if we don't reject them, this is going to be the standards. They're essentially approved by us. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, what is Pro Tem Paxton's message, Chairman Pugh's message?
Pro Tem basically said he was open to the conversation, but I don't think they have full caucus support to move it forward. I think it's a very divisive issue, which is, I think, what Superintendent Walters chooses to do, which is bring up things that divide us instead of things we can work on together. And so I believe this, I'm not speaking for the pro tem, but I believe their caucus is split on it. And so it's not one that would be easy to bring and pass. And so I think it would take a coalition of people who understand how damaging this is to education and to the textbooks that are going to be available to our kids.
I have a quick follow-up on the mental health question. So Governor Stitt yesterday said that he doesn't think that money is being cut from the mental health department, and that he said a contract is a contract, and he's not aware of changes being made after the contract is signed. Is that, you're saying that's not the information that you've been receiving?
I have seen letters sent to community behavioral health agencies about cuts to contracts. Now, maybe the language cut is maybe that's a word that's not acceptable, but you're talking about something that was agreed to in terms of terms for how they serve people. So someone has addiction and they need help with housing, because we know that people have real challenges with substance use, especially when they're unhoused. Housing stability matters for them getting well. We have been allowing those people to pay for housing, for instance. If we cut that, that's going to change those terms, right? And so I feel like that's spin. Show me that that's not the case, because I've seen the letters from the other side. Yeah. All right. Thanks, y'all. Appreciate you.
Thank you, sir. Tim, I'm sorry.
He's alive.